Hi, my name is Colin Graham, and I'm the guest animation director on this month's AnimChallenge. And today I'm going to be analyzing the work of our winner, Dane Romley, and with his incredible 2D animation. So let's take a look at the animation, and let's dive right in. Cool, and it loops all the way around. So we have this awesome bouncing kangaroo, and there's a really nice sort of like organic squishiness to this animation, a lot of energy to it as he kind of like launches out here with his first punch in the combo. He winds up, pow, he kicks, and then he turns into a steam train and drives right across the frame and wipes out his opponent. All right, so this is just an amazing piece of animation. So, congratulations to Dane. And no doubt, it was quite obvious that this is there's some really excellent animation this month, but this one really sort of stood out as the winner. And we don't often see a lot of 2D animation. It's not something that we typically see. Mostly 3D characters in the AnimChallenge. So this one's going to be a real treat to analyze. I'm going to analyze this sequence as opposed to necessarily critiquing it. I will point out a few things that I think could sort of generally be might be sort of overall improvements to kind of help the energy level and quality level of the scene. But this is really excellent work, and it's. What we'll do here is we'll focus more on some of the things that work really, really well and why they work the way that they do, and try to ascertain some tricks and tips that will help us. Most of us are working with 3D characters and 3D animation. So what can we learn from this incredible piece of sort of traditional hand-drawn animation and apply that to our 3D work? So we'll kind of dive right in from there. So the overall, impression I have of this, it's a nice, simple, clean background. I just wanted to point out one thing. These lines aren't symmetrical; they're not parallel, and these lines in the composition here, they're not exactly sort of even. And this is a sort of a quality that you quite often get with 2D animation. That you 3D animation, things tend to be sort of a little bit more mechanical, a little bit more symmetrical in your character poses and your character, topology and geometry, in your character designs, but also in your backgrounds. And so, there's an intention to make these lines slightly different that just gives this a little bit of appeal. So just wanted to point that out. In terms of the overall staging and composition, the character design is really clean. It's easy to see this character, and his silhouettes kind of work well for him. He's got this band here. The gloves are slightly different color from the trunks, which is different color from the body. So even when those things kind of pass in front of each other, right here, you get a sort of a clear sense for a clear sense of silhouette. The red nose is a really nice little trick here. It's not like super saturated either here, because there's really, it's mostly kind of warm grays except for these kind of things, these little highlight points. But it also helps visually tie into the train, because the button nose on the train is the same as the nose of the kangaroo. So it just kind of helps us, even although we kind of see him kind of transfer from one to the other, it helps us remind, sort of cement the fact that this is the same character. He hasn't like blended into a train. He is the train. It's a little detail. So the overall, sort of, proportion and everything is really good. There's a couple of things here I'll talk a little bit later on about the transformation into the train, because I think that's an area where I think the concept is really cool, but I think there's a couple of things that can be tweaked there to polish that a bit. And it kind of zooms across the frame here like this, which is really nice. So the thing that really stands out for me overall is the quality and the appeal of the posing of this character. Almost any frame that I stop on here, there's really nice, clean lines. There's these lines of synergy, and so let's stop here. Let's stop on this frame right here. So this is clearly a key drawing and it's actually held for a few frames. So this is clearly a kind of a key drawing, and this really, kind of shines for me in terms of, we can kind of study and analyze the pose. With 3D characters, we typically, this was not a pose that I would generally expect a 3D character to get into. I would not expect to sort of see something quite like this. And part of it is because when you kind of pop that character onto frame, you drop your character into your scene, your character kind of lines up, and you start to pose them. They exist already on the frame, and so they already look like something. And so when you kind of get to a pose where it feels right, you're kind of tempted to kind of stop there and maybe not push it maybe as far as you can. And I remember when I was in school, when I studied, it was eons ago at Sheridan College, and we would spend a lot of time doing life drawing and gesture drawings. And what I can see here is that there's lines of action and these gestures. They're the backbone of Dane's piece here, and so I wanted to kind of point out why those things matter, because this is not just about sort of solid drawing, good lines of action. This is always also about appeal, because these complementary curves and connecting curves, they make good drawings. They make appealing drawings. We like them, and we feel attracted to this character because he's nice design. If this was architecture, or if this was fashion design, if this was these principles, of the way that these lines affect humans are sort of universal. So first thing we can see is we have a nice clean line of action that kind of comes through here and it continues through the foot. And we see this line of action that kind of complements it, continues around. We can see that these feet have been drawn in with the same line here. We can see, we've got this really nice clean line here that comes across. Really nice use of negative space here. This arm kind of comes right across the body, but it comes so far across the body, and it kind of works with that. You've got these lines here. This line, there's even some lines in here, right? There's some nice curves in here. This curve wants to kind of connect to that curve. This wants to kind of connect. These kind of want to connect all the way through to that line of action, right? This here and this here, they kind of mimic each other. This is repeated, and there's this really nice sort of draftsman quality to this sort of pose, and the line of action kind of plowing through here is really nice. And so this is something we would struggle to kind of get this this level of quality with a lot of 3D characters. Another thing here which kind of interesting here is the use of holds. If you start to step through this, one of the things that we see here is we see a lot of frames that are held for two drawings. It's not every drawing, and even in some cases, some of the drawings, like here, this is the same drawing, but just the hands are changed. So 46, 47, 48. 47, 48, these drawings end up being the same drawing, but the hands are just slightly different. And then 49 and 50 are the same drawing. And part of this, I think, comes from the process of the way that you do your timing in 2D animation. You sort of put in your key drawings, you take it, you plug it in, you record your frames, you plug it in. Back in ancient times, before we really had a webcam and a MacBook, we would record these things. I'm going back to like 1999, when Brent George and I were in college. We used these tools called QARs, which were these massive discs that could record about 60 frames. You plug all your drawings in, and then you'd sort of start to play with this dope sheet, and you'd say, okay, I want this drawing for 2, this drawing for 3, you go 3, 4, 6 in some cases. And you would kind of play around with those and play them back until you kind of got the impression that that everything was kind of animating with the timing and the holds the way you want. And by holding a drawing for 2 frames or 3 frames, or making a drawing on 1 frame, you change the interpolation between that. And but you're starting off with those sort of like key drawings, because at the end of the day, the key frames are those are drawings. They're static drawings in 2D animation, and it's sort of a byproduct of the classical 2D animation business. Typically shows are animated on 12 twos at 12 frames at 24 FPS. But for real fast moving action, you would quite often want to do things on ones, or if you have your animation, your background animated, you want your character not to strobe against the background, you'd have to animate your character on ones. Or do some neat tricks like Spider-Verse where they animate everything on twos, but they actually move the character on the background between frames. There's tons of analysis of that, so you can go look that up if you want. But here, you can see that these frames have been kind of held, and what's important about those is this gives the eye a chance to kind of rest. So as I'm kind of scrolling back and forth through here, to rest. Now, the thing with animation is it's not meant to be seen. It's not meant to be seen frame by frame. It's meant to be seen in sequential frames at the full frame rate. So there are things that we may see here, like these held frames, that we wouldn't see if we played it back at 24 or 30 FPS. Just kind of point that out. You don't see that hold there. Your eye kind of fills that in for you. And what it does is it kind of helps us see this down pose before this little stretch. So it goes down and stretches up, right? He's stretching up here. And he's going to this sort of squash pose. And it kind of helps our eye lock in and kind of rest on that for a second. And in some ways, like this, I don't know of anybody really doing this in 3D animation really that much, where we're kind of holding, you're adding these like two holds. I think typically, and it's part of the way that 3D animation works. You plop in keyframes and it interpolates it, and you always get some sort of interpolation unless you are literally animating, on step frames. This would normally interpolate. So it's a little thing to kind of point out here about the way that the timing is figured out in 2D and how it leads us to have these held frames. There's another held frame there. And when you play it back at full speed, you don't see it. Your eye kind of registers that as, that there's motion in between there. It's the beauty and magic of animation. Let's talk a little bit more about this use of sort of squash and stretch here, and the timing and spacing of things here. So I really like the way that this sort of squashes in here. So he's using the tail here as a sort of like where the force is, so the tail kind of locks in on the ground, and boom, and then these feet can kind of come up into position, and this tail is actually growing in volume, but it kind of works. And we even and then again, this is really clever, getting the use of curves. You've got these lines that are kind of going this way, the nose is kind of dragging back. This is really, a really nice squash pose, just really kind of pushing it there. But even all these curves, there's still some discipline in keeping these curves complementing each other. They're all very intentional. And then we go from here to here. So you see we've got a chance for our eye to kind of rest there, and pow. And you need that little hold here. And you notice the way that the ears kind of come forward? Well, that's where that energy comes from. That head comes all the way forward there, even although he's held it for 2 frames. 21 and 22 are 20 and 21 are the same frame. Then the ears come forward a little bit, but then it stretches all the way out in 1 frame. And love doing these like fake feet, the duplicate of the feet with this, and then the legs kind of spring. But this is such an extreme pose, pop to pop. And this is quite often when we're animating fight animation, you need to be able to kind of go a lot of times like pose to pose, frame by frame. You have transitions like that. And then here you kind of soften it out. So you favored the key. This drawing is more close to the other one, and then the feet have disappeared. Right? And you don't even see those duplicate feet at full speed. Right? They're there to kind of, they sell it. They sell the idea You just don't see that frame, but you register it, which is really important. So one of the things I think we can take away is the, I think it's become very popular to put in smear frames and stuff like that. It's actually relatively hard working in video games, for example, to have duplicates of geometry like this. It's a lot easier to do that kind of stuff when you're doing sort of offline and pre-rendered work. You would actually have to ask for a different rig to do that. So this is something, having these sort of duplicate feet and also smear frames, they have to be added in by effects artists in video games in real time work. So it's nice to see them and wish we could use them a little bit more in our real-time video game work. So here we're going through, and we can see the stretch, and even the way that the legs sort of coil out here. This is a really nice artistic choice here. Okay, so one of the other things I love here is, I love the use of curves and shapes and appealing shapes. These feet, there's a circle here like this. There's a wheel that actually becomes a wheel that actually becomes this wheel here. So this is something, when I'm animating in 3D, I like to put in guide shapes when I want to move things on particular arcs. If I want a character to spin and flip in the air, I'll create a guide shape, a sphere or a NURB sphere, or even a box, and you just with a wireframe box, and you want your character to kind of stay inside it. You could do this here if you were doing this. You could create a guide circle that you want those feet to go along and preserve. So you see here, foot comes through here, boom, boom. Okay, and then it's starting to come back through here like that, but this other foot, it's now maintaining that circle, and then the first foot is maintaining that circle, and then boom, it becomes a circle. And it creates that circular motion, and I just say this line here is kind of complementing that as well too. This line here is kind of complementing that, and it's preserving this idea of a circular motion, right? You've got a big sort of spherical shape in there, and then let's remove those. Let's just talk about this transition here. This is really, really nice. The way we kind of drag down. There's a line of action here, and it's like this thing here is kind of pulling back with all that force, right? It's creating all this torque, pulling back, right? Preserving that line all the way through there, preserving that line through there like that, and then preserving it coming through here. It kind of starts to lose a little bit of the appeal of it there, but it creates this sort of sucking in motion. This is really, really nice through here. That's a really important set of curves to kind of maintain here. And all these lines kind of complement each other. Right? They all kind of complement each other, kind of pull us up into here. Okay, let's talk about, there's a little trick here that's going on in here. I'm going to, let's get out of the way here a little bit. In this segment right here, we've got something called rocking. And this is, that's what I was kind of always told it's called, is when you rock the frames. And this is when you have like a character who kind of comes in and they shake. I used to see this a lot when we were animating with anime style stuff with like Naruto. And you would see this like the characters would go into this pose and kind of, let's get on camera here and kind of like, kind of rock because they're angry, pow, and then they just explode out. And it's a really cheap way of basically creating this motion in 2D by just playing the frames forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards and like forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards. It's essentially like you're rocking the playback on the frames. I think this is really effective here. And but what I would propose here is there's two things that actually happen here. The frame actually changes and zooms out a little bit, and that's, I think, to kind of help this train stay in frame. And I don't know if that's like a sort of a reaction to, you know, if this is like, you know, if I don't know how Dane animated this. I don't know Dane, so I'm gonna guess here, and I could be guessing this really, really wrong. But I actually see that there's a lot of attention and effort into these drawings here at the front, and I actually think that he may have run out of energy a little bit. Funnily enough, ironically, he ran out of energy here towards the end, because some of the beautiful qualities I'm seeing at the beginning here are just a little bit, they're just not quite as pushed and quite as polished here at the end. So this rocking in this train frame here, I feel like it could maybe, you know, it could be even a little bit tighter, or you could not pull all the way out, but actually so you pull all the way out to here, and then your frame rocks a little bit more. So as if your frame pulls out in reaction to the train getting big. So the train actually gets really, really big, and then so you delay your pull out. Just delay your pull out by, I don't know, maybe like 4 frames. So your camera fully pans out about here, about frame 178. And the other thing you could do with the rocking motion is, because I'm guessing this is done this is all like composite in like Toon Boom or something like that. So you could actually scale those drawings up. So you could actually, you know, scale him. So every time he rocks, you scale him so that the rocking motion is actually him building and, you know, getting bigger and bigger and bigger motion, instead of just the same frames repeated over and over again. Again, rocking is you see it a lot in TV animation. You see it a lot in anime animation, because in a lot of those sequences, it's about budget and economy. And, you know, this is an 11-second piece, so, you know, it's a cheap tactic of creating motion. And maybe this is an area you just spend a little bit more time kind of pushing those drawings a little bit and having them expand, or even just scaling them up. And the next thing we see here is he kind of pulls through here. And remember those beautiful curves that I was talking about, those forms and those kind of shapes? I feel like we kind of lost them here on the train. I think that the train is, you know, it's just like these lines don't kind of connect up and create the kind of form in the same way. You know, there's a nice drawing here. There's a nice line here and a nice line here, but the smokestack it could have a nicer line, right? You know, and I point that out only because you wouldn't really notice this, except for that it's done perfectly earlier in the shot. And so it just kind of needs to be kind of pushed here a little bit. You know, does the top of this kind of caboose thing kind of want to drag behind a little bit? You know, do these lines want to kind of come down here a little bit? Even here, this line here, actually, that's interesting. This line here actually kind of comes, well, I can't draw it, kind of comes in a little bit. And I kind of feel like this line here should have this curve, like this drag curve quality to all of that, right? Because you're kind of creating that drag and that torque kind of feeling with those, you know. It's this line right here is great. And we need to I think we kind of need to feel that energy kind of going through here. And the other thing here is the train now is fully in frame, and it actually has lost some of its sort of overall impression and scale, right? Because we've kind of lost, like here it kind of is big and kind of dominating the frame, but as it kind of goes through here, it's not breaking the top of the frame anymore. It's not breaking the bottom of the frame anymore. And here I actually think, you know, you could bring this in, you know, maybe the smokestack needs to kind of always hit the top of the frame or something like this. It just needs to maybe not always fit completely in frame, because it's supposed, and that's kind of a visual language trick of making something feel massive. It's so big that it just doesn't fit in the frame. And so, yeah, this is one little area I would kind of push that a little bit too. And there's some really nice squash and stretch earlier on in the piece, and I think this is a little bit of feedback here I would like to see is maybe here this is starting from a more of a stretch pose, like all that energy of the train zipping across the frame, all that sort of energy of it kind of plowing through there, and then I want to kind of see him kind of snap and stretch, pull back into here. Right, and so he's here we could you could have him like much higher, like as if he's kind of being sucked back in from that position down there, and then sort of squish into the, is that the start and end frame? No, it's not. Yeah. Boom. Yeah, just to kind of exaggerate this motion here a little bit more, stretch it, start with, maybe it's stretched up a little bit more. His pelvis is a little bit more here. His foot's kind of stretched out. Creating a really nice curve for the foot coming up through here. I don't want to. I'm not nearly the draftsman that Dane is, but bringing the hands and the feet up here high like this, something like this. Boom, boom, so that it kind of has somewhere to kind of come down to, so it kind of comes into the ground. It kind of comes into the ground harder. Even here, if this foot is meant to be here, you kind of go, I want the character kind of, I'm just going to rough this in really loose, just so you get the idea. But, kind of boom, boom, and down into position. I think it would just, the energy level just isn't quite the same in this recovery, given that this is all about building energy, and that all that energy now just dissipates off the frame, but we still want to kind of like get the feeling of it kind of coming back. So this piece is just incredible. I have to say, it's been a real pleasure to review it. And I'm just going to play it here for us on loop. I think that there's so much to kind of learn from this, and I think as one of the things that I always did when I was kind of learning 2D animation was I kind of like to go in and draw over other people's drawings and kind of sort of figure out what they did, all those complementary curves that are going into there, and all those connecting curves and complementary curves. They're really, really important, and they're really hard to get in with pre-rigged characters, and we have to work really exceptionally hard. I think this is the beauty of 2D animation, is that it just kind of, you just draw it the way that you should draw it. I'm just thinking about something aesthetically here, transitioning from a kangaroo to a train. This is a really good use of the medium, what 2D animation can do easily that 3D animation doesn't do well. If I wanted to kind of trait this transition between here and here, there's a lot of work that goes into converting him to here, to there, to there, to there. There's a bunch of unique stuff that's going on here. If you wanted to be able to create a rig that could kind of stretch your train that way, your rigger, your character models, your riggers might have to create a bunch of blend shapes and a bunch of rigs with a bunch of controllers and lattices and clusters and stuff like that. Could never do this on a 3D animated real-time animation for a computer game. Think about how much time it would take for a rigger to kind of set all that up for you. It would be hard to do. Whereas, with 2D animation, it's the time it takes to kind of transform it, to draw it, I should say. It's the time it takes to draw it. It's how many minutes does it take you to draw the frame. And so you can do cool stuff like that. And I think that this is, this is something that we kind of always had in 2D animation that we kind of lost when we went into 3D animation, or we have to work a lot harder. So not always is it easier to do things in 3D animation. And also having the feet turn into, where's the springs here? It's an awful lot easier to draw those legs as springs like that than it is to set up and rig and set all that up. Right? It's so you using the advantage of the medium, being able to like change distort the drawing is a real benefit of the using 2D animation. And I think this is something. I think this is why everybody likes this animation. Why I like it. Certainly why I like this one so much is because Dane Romley has just done a really really clever job of using these like little gags and these little tricks, and the timing is just really really excellent on everything here. There was one other thing I just wanted to quickly point out. I would typically, we talked about held frames. I would typically break this down. So you're going to hold. 97, 98, 99 is a held frame. Right? I would typically animate this section here because you're going very, very far. I would go animate that on ones. So I'll just kind of point out the hold. So 93, 94, 95. 95 is a hold, but that's okay because it's a pose. It's a pose we want to rest our eye on. 96 and 97 are also holds as well too. But this could have been an opportunity maybe to kind of straighten those out a little bit, just to create some motion in there. And then you go from here to here and 99. So I would maybe figure out what you want to do with 98 and 99. Super. I don't even know if that would work or not. But it's just something that when I was kind of looking at it and analyzing it, it's something that is a feedback that I would typically give if this was a 3D animation I was doing for a certain sort of gameplay sequence. I would sort of say, you kind of want to break that down a little bit, but you play it at full speed, you don't see it. And that's the beauty of 2D animation. So anyway, just want to say congratulations for this month's winner, for Dane Romley for winning this month. This is a fantastic piece of animation, and it's been a real pleasure to analyze it. And hopefully, if I'm going to take a lot of these little details away from myself, and try to incorporate them into future animations that I would do. This is always the process is, we study other people's work, we analyze it, and it's a benefit that animation directors get, is that they get to analyze other people's work. And especially when you get something that's just as exceptional as this, you can learn a lot from it. So it's important to not just, it's important as animators to analyze and study the work of other animators. If it's a case of drawing over top of it, if it's a case of kind of going in and kind of dissecting it and seeing how they've done it, and analyzing it, talking with other animators about how they do it, how you see that this has been animated, you can then incorporate all of those things into your own work, and your own work will get better. Traditional artists have always gone to museums, and they've painted copies of the Renaissance masters. That's how they learned. That's how artists, typically have learned, is they've learned from their masters by copying their masters' work until they learned their techniques, and then they branched out and did their own things. And so this is, analyzing this is, analyzing a beautiful piece of work like this is not just, I get an awful lot out of this. There are things that I did not know about this that that I learned on the process of sort of studying it. You ended off a better animator just by studying somebody else's work. So, anyway, just wanted to say congratulations to Dane as this month's winner, and thank you for the privilege of being able to analyze and review this brilliant piece of work.